Good morning, everyone. My name is Caitlin Yeager, Director of Heritage Programs for Missouri Humanities. Our mission is to enrich lives and strengthen communities by connecting Missourians with the people, places, and ideas that shape our society. Thank you so much for joining us today for our three-part Heritage Tourism Workshop, part of our Cultural Heritage Workshop program, dedicated to providing tools and resources necessary for communities to reevaluate cultural heritage assets, improve community involvement, and increase tourism and economic development opportunities. We are starting off our day today with finding your travel MO. And we have a bit of a speaker switch up. Our Director of Tourism, Stephen Foutes, had a last minute commitment, but never fear, we are so pleased to welcome Lori Sims, Deputy Director of Tourism, who will lead our webinar this morning. She'll provide an overview of the Division of Tourism's work to promote Missouri as a leisure travel destination. You'll also get a behind the scenes look at the making of the division's That's My MO campaign and hear information about destinations and attractions around Missouri. Whether you are joining us through Zoom or watching on Facebook Live, we invite you to be part of the conversation. If you're on Facebook, feel free to comment to let us know you're watching or ask questions for us to consider. If you're on Zoom, feel free to submit questions in one of two ways. There's the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You just type in a question and submit it, and it comes to me. Or you can use the chat feature, which works like any other chat feature. You just send a message, comes to me, and then I can ask it to Lori later on. If you enjoy our program today and are interested in seeing more from Missouri Humanities, please check us out on Facebook or our website for the most up-to-date information about our events. We also have a really great membership program that we launched last year, where benefits include free books, discounted tickets to special programs, and access to members-only events. To become a member, simply visit mohumanities.org and click Become a Member. At the conclusion of each webinar, a survey will pop up on your screen. So don't quickly X out of Zoom. That survey will pop up when I end the webinar. I'd really appreciate if you could all take the time to let us know what you thought of the presentation today. There will be a separate survey for each of our 3 webinars today. These surveys are very important to us as we continue to bring public programming to Missourians and work towards a more thoughtful, informed, and civil society. So with that, I am very pleased to turn this over to Lori Sims, Deputy Director for the Missouri Division of Tourism. And let's see what she's got to say about tourism in Missouri these days. Thanks so much, Lori, for being here, and take it away.
Good morning. Thank you, Caitlin. And I'm excited to share with everyone through the magic of technology what we're doing with the Division of Tourism. So let's jump in. Okay. There we go. So the Missouri Division of Tourism, who we are. We are overseen by the Missouri Tourism Commission. That commission is made up of the Lieutenant Governor, 2 members of the Senate, 2 members of the House of Representatives, and 5 citizen members who are appointed by the governor. The commission oversees our work and approves the budget of what we are going to do with the dollars that we've given in order to promote tourism and travel in Missouri. So we market the Show Me State to leisure travelers. We support the DMOs, our destination marketing organizations that are found throughout the state, through a cooperative marketing program, as well as working and partnering with them on other projects as they come up. We have an industry research available to the industry that our research section does. We work with what is called the PESO model. And some of you may have been familiar with that. It's paid, earned, owned, and shared media. The paid or the paid advertising, the TV commercials that you see, or the digital ads that pop up when you log into your computer. Earned is what traditionally is known as public relations. Owned are the platforms such as our visitmo.com or the social platforms that are actually our travel guide is one of our owned assets. And then shared relates to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and social platforms. And so we work with all of those things. We also house the Missouri Film Office, which is working on getting film projects in the state. And we have 5 official Missouri Welcome Centers that are located throughout the state, and they do a great job of greeting visitors and pointing them to other things they can do to add on to their trip. So to talk a little bit about That's My MO, that is the campaign that is currently in market. And we began work on That's My MO in 2019. And we had planned to launch in the spring of 20, but as happened to all of us, we had to put our plans on pause. So we began to work on this campaign, and I'm going to take you a little bit through how we did this campaign. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the campaign, strategy, how we put it together, and all of the things that went into making this campaign happen. So the objective of the campaign was to shift perceptions among people who aren't attracted to Missouri's attraction, to people who don't even know about Missouri. And we wanted to get people who don't think of Missouri as a tourism opportunity to consider coming here. The whole plan is to make Missouri top of mind and a destination that people want to visit. So we went in December of 2019, we did focus group testing in 3 markets, 3 out-of-state markets and in St. Louis. And we tested the 5 concepts that you see on the screen. The winner of that was the That's My MO campaign. We use a company called Strategic Marketing Research Insights, and they did some research on character campaigns. So once we had determined that we wanted to do That's My MO, which would be focused on a character, we did some research on what would stick with people. We know that character campaigns can be memorable. They can stand out. Many of us are familiar with Mayhem, who sells insurance, or the Geico Gecko, or Aflac, or Flow. And so we wanted to look at how we could make our Mo stand out. And so the big idea was that we would have Mo. Mo would be a stand-in for Missouri and would be a tour guide who would show visitors all the different ways that they could have their perfect vacation. There's a Mo for every MO. So when we did the spot testing, there were no negative reactions to the concept, and people reacted quite positively to the idea of Mo. And as you see on the screen, we have what are called animatics, which is what the ad agency brought to show us in the early stages of how a Mo commercial might work. So this time last year, we went and we did another round of testing. We did all of this online. And with this round of testing, it was personality. Who should play Mo? What type of person should we look for to personify Missouri? And if you look on the screen, you will see that we have images of celebrities. And we did not necessarily mean that we were going to try to cast a celebrity, but each one of those celebrities represents a personality type. We wanted to see, how do people react to these various personality types, and which ones would make them most willing to engage and listen and consider interacting with Mo. And we learned that Mo needed to be funny and engaging. Mo needed to be accessible and inviting, outgoing and fun-loving. So we did a casting call. We were looking for actors of all ages. We wanted all ethnicities, all genders, age ranges of all different types. We wanted to open it up to everyone. We auditioned more than 200 people. And when we finally got done, we selected Ashley Santana, who is from St. Louis, to be our Mo. So then we started pre-production in late summer last year. We went through all of the entire commercial, how Ashley would be dressed as Mo? Where would Ashley go? And we did something we've not normally done. We shot this on a set. So instead of going to a location, we rented out a place, turned it into a sound stage, and then began working on how to put together the That's My Mo campaign. And as you see on the screen, we had to consider everything from the props in the background on each set to her wardrobe. And it was quite intensive. So one of the other things is that we filmed this during the pandemic and we shot in late September, early October. We, as you see in the middle of the screen, we have our creative directors and everyone on set was wearing masks. They did temperature checks every day. We did a very safe shoot. There is a shot on the left of what the actual set looked like for one of the scenes. And on the upper right is another of the scenes that ended up in the commercial. If you've seen the commercial, when she's on the roller coaster, that is actually what she was sitting in. So the campaign is built around a main Mo, seen on the left, and then we have 5 what we call manager Mo's, which are the broad categories of things that we know travelers are interested in. So we have an outdoor Mo, a culture Mo, a family fun Mo, sports Mo, foodie Mo. Those are the manager Mo's. And then under each of those manager Mo's, we have other Mo's. And I believe that we have decided that Mo is both singular and plural, just like deer. So under each of these manager Mo's, there are other Mo. So on our website now, on our homepage, you will have this introduction to there's a Mo for every MO. And on our website, you will find attractions, lodging, events, trip ideas, and more, as well as how to order a travel guide. Our travel guide is our largest print asset. This year we have done 275,000 copies. It's distributed statewide, it's shipped nationally, and somewhat internationally. There are a few international destinations where we will mail guides as well. So outdoors. When we talk about outdoor activities and we promote the things that are of interest to people, and particularly coming out of the pandemic, we know that people like the idea of being outdoors, being able to spread out and be safe and enjoy outdoor recreation. So we think Missouri has much to offer in those buckets. We have 53 state parks, lake destinations, float trips, and lots of beautiful outdoor scenery in our national wildlife refuges. History. History Mo can take you through attractions such as the Ancient Ozarks Natural History Museum, Civil War battle sites, the World War I Museum and Memorial in Kansas City. We now have the replica of the Vietnam Veterans Wall in Perryville. And then we have a couple of entries on the United States Civil Rights Trail, which has the old courthouse in St. Louis, site of the Dred Scott trials, and the Harry Truman Presidential Library and Museum. The museum houses the executive order that President Truman issued in 1948, desegregating the armed forces. Under music, we have blues, and with the National Blues Museum in St. Louis, the American Jazz Museum in Kansas City, as well as all of the other jazz clubs that people can visit. We have bluegrass in Branson, many festivals there, as well as the Ragtime Festival in Sedalia. Foodie Mo. Foodie Mo will introduce people to all of the great food opportunities that we have in Missouri. We have everything from down-home cooking to fine dining, and James Beard award-winning chefs. And so these are some of the things that Foodimo will be introducing people to. So we also market Missouri in, we have divided the state into regions, and we found that sometimes people are looking for things that they can tie together. So when we talk about regional marketing efforts, we can look at Northwest Missouri. Within Kansas City, you have things such as the Nelson Atkins Museum, as well as the Arabia Steamboat Museum. In St. Joseph, you've got the home of the Pony Express, as well as Jesse James history. And nearby to St. Joseph, you have Jesse James's boyhood home in Kearney. In Hamilton, you have the Missouri Star Quilt Company, which has drawn hundreds of thousands of people to this small town in Northwest Missouri. Jenny Doan started doing a YouTube channel talking about quilting, and she has more than 2 million visits to her channel a year. And the community has now multiple quilting opportunities as well as quilting retreats. Hamilton's also the boyhood home of J.C. Penney. And then in Jamesport, you have the Amish community, which you can tour and visit the Amish stores. So show me 5 things about the Northwest. We have Mickey Mouse beginning in Marceline with Walt Disney. Many people don't know Walt Disney lived in Marceline from the time that he was 3 until he was 8 years old. And he says those were the best years of his life. He modeled the main street on Marceline, he modeled the main street at the park after the main street in Marceline and the way that he remembered it from his childhood. In Kansas City, you have the historic 18th and Vine District, which is home also to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and we mentioned the American Jazz Museum before. If you're looking for quirky, we have in Independence, Leila's Hair Museum. During the Victorian period, people would take clippings of hair and make jewelry and keepsakes out of it, and she has a collection of her museum. The Glore Psychiatric Museum in St. Joseph explores the history of psychiatric care, and is also something that you don't see every day. Agritourism is big in Missouri, and you've got the Shadow Milk Company in Osborne and Green Dirt Farms in Weston. And then Pioneer Trails Adventures and Independence, as many of the westward trails left from Independence. In the northeast quadrant, you have St. Louis, and you have all of those major attractions that you can see on the right side of the screen. You have St. Charles and the Lewis and Clark Boathouse and Museum. And we did a commemoration of the Bicentennial of Lewis and Clark back in 2004, 2006. And it's certainly a visit that you should make. And the Foundry Art Center, where many local artisans provide glass blowing and jewelry and all sorts of things of that nature. In Hannibal, you have the Mark Twain Boyhood Home and Museum, as well as the Mark Twain Cave. And then you could take a riverboat ride. And in Herman, you have Stonehill Winery and other wineries such as Adam Pukta, which is the oldest family operated winery still in existence in America. So if we want to talk about 5 top things in the Northeast, you have Long Row Lavender Farm in Wright City, which is that agritourism thing again. Jesse James's hideout at Merrimack Caverns. He is alleged to have spent time there and even hidden some of his loot in Merrimack Caverns. The birthplace of the unthinkable Molly Brown is in Hannibal, and there's a museum dedicated to her life. In Wright City, you have Big Joel's Safari and the Cannon Dam Opry in Perry. For a Central Missouri snapshot, you've got Jefferson City and the Missouri State Capitol and Museum, as well as the Governor's Mansion. In Fulton, you have the National Churchill Museum, which is a phenomenal place to visit. Many people may not realize that the church was actually a Christopher Wren church that was disassembled in London and rebuilt in Fulton brick by brick. In Columbia, you have Rockbridge Memorial State Park, which is another great opportunity to get out and enjoy outdoor recreation. Lake of the Ozarks offers all sorts of outdoor recreation opportunities, as well as Big Surf Water Park and Haha Tonka State Park. And then in Arrow Rock, you have the Lyceum Theater, which puts on Broadway quality shows. So 5 things to see in the central region. Take a walk on a large segment of the Katy Trail State Park. You can hike it or bike it. In Boonville, you can visit Warm Springs Ranch, where you can get up close and personal with the Clydesdales. In Jefferson City, again, you can visit the Missouri State Penitentiary and through the tours and the museums. The penitentiary was the oldest penitentiary west of the Mississippi when it was decommissioned. Golfing at the Lake of the Ozarks, there's 13 courses and they have a golf trail. And then there is the museum complex in Fort Leonard Wood that looks at military history, as well as the Missouri Military History Museum in Jefferson City. In the Southwest region, you have Springfield area with Bass Pro Shops and Fantastic Caverns, as well as Small and Civil War Cave. Dropping down just another 30 miles to Branson, you've got Silver Dollar City and the Titanic Museum. The unsinkable Molly Brown that I mentioned in connection with Hannibal survived the Titanic and actually helped save passengers, which is how she became known as Unsinkable. In Joplin, you have the Joplin History and Mineral Museum, as well as Grand Falls. And then in Carthage, you've got the Precious Moments Chapel and Gardens and the 66 Drive-In Theater. Top 5 things, well, I shouldn't say top 5, but 5 things to consider in the Southwest. You can enjoy a show in Branson with the dozens of theaters. You can connect with nature at Top of the Rock, the Ozarks Heritage Preserve, Dogwood Canyon. You can go to Mansfield for Laura Ingalls Wilder's home. For the literary among us, and most children have read one of the Little House books, you can tour her home. You can go wild with the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum in Springfield and the Wild Animals Safari in Stratford and the National Tiger Sanctuary in Saddlebrook. And then you can make a stop at the George Washington Carver National Monument in Diamond to learn about the life and the work of George Washington Carver and how he impacted agriculture. In the Southeast region, we have Cape Girardeau with the Burkle and Harry L. Crisp Museum, as well as the Cape Girardeau Conservation Nature Center. In St. Genevieve, you've got French colonial architecture, and St. Genevieve has just been named a national park, or a section of St. Gen is now a national park, and you've got Pickle Springs Natural Area. In Bonne Terre, you've got Bonne Terre Mine where you can scuba dive, as well as the Space Museum. St. James, you've got Merrimack Spring Park, St. James Winery and Public House, and then in Eminence, you've got Echo Bluff State Park, as well as float trips. Show Me 5 in Southeast, Sky High Pie, I believe it's actually Sky High Apple Pie, which you can get at the Blue Isle restaurant in Kimmswick. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at some of Stephen's captions on this presentation. Try something newt at the Onondaga State Cave Park. Take a hike at Elephant Rocks State Park or at Tom Sock Mountain. And then in New Madrid, you have the Historical Museum, home of the New Madrid Fault. You can get your kicks on Route 66 through Bob's Gasoline Alley, the Wagon Wheel Motel in the Murals in Cuba, and the Rocker at Fanning Outpost. So road trip roundup, one of the things that we think people are really interested in doing, particularly coming out of the pandemic, is road trips. So we have a lot to offer on that. We have nearly 300 miles of Route 66. As many of us know, Route 66 enters Missouri in St. Louis and travels in a southwesterly direction and leaves in Joplin. And on many of the attractions along the route are the old Chain of Rocks Bridge. Of course, if you're in St. Louis, you need to stop at Ted Drew's and get the frozen custard. We've got Route 66 State Park, Merrimack Caverns again, the murals in Cuba, as well as the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, which has been restored to look like the roadside motels of that era. And you have Devil's Elbow Bridge, the History Museum on the Square, Gary's Gay Parita, the 66 Drive-In Theater, and more. We have many sections of Route 66 where you can get off I-44 and drive the original road. And then a newer road trip that we like to tell people about is the Highway 36 corridor, or the Way of the American Genius, stretching from Hannibal on the east to St. Joseph on the west. Highway 36 takes you to if you start with Hannibal, you're in the home of Mark Twain. And as you travel west, you will go through Kirksville, where you can learn about A.T. Still at the osteopathy. In Marceline, you've got the Walt Disney, which we talked about earlier. In Hamilton, you have J.C. Penney, which we also mentioned earlier. In Laclede, there is General John J. Pershing's boyhood home. He was the general in World War I of the Allied Expedition Forces. And then, of course, you have, as you hit Chillicothe, the home of sliced bread. Excuse me. And in St. Joseph, you're going to have the Pony Express, as well as the Jesse James History. And so I have gone through the slides and am ready for any questions anyone might have.
Thanks, Lori. While people start to submit some questions, I actually jotted down a few that I think might be kind of fun to discuss, that I think would probably apply to most people, or at least organizations that are maybe represented by our attendees. So I love the Find Your Travel MO campaign. I think it's a great play on words, and I think that it's a unique way to showcase Missouri. But what I think might be nice for individual counties and communities to hear is how can they use that to their advantage on a smaller scale. So obviously Find Your Travel MO, you are a statewide organization and you guys are obviously looking at marketing the state as a whole, but how might an individual county or community use Find Your Travel MO to their advantage?
That's a great question. I think that on our site, when you go to the website, and I think I actually forgot to mention it when we were going through this, there's a quiz that helps people figure out what's of interest to them. I think that individual communities can package their attractions and their assets in such a way along those same sort of themes, that people are traveling and they want to do outdoor things, or people are traveling and they want to do family things. And so if you kind of put those things together, then it makes it easier for your visitors to figure out what you have for them, and what they might want to do. And understanding that most travelers are going to fit in more than one bucket. But if you're traveling with your children, you're really interested in things that are going to be good for the whole family. So if you package those together, it makes it easier in their planning.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, one thing that, especially smaller communities and counties that are maybe have a little bit more of a widespread, area of tourist attractions, I think categorizing it kind of like you did, are you someone that likes food? Are you someone that likes adventure or outdoors or museums or etc.? Categorizing is one of the best things you can do, because like you said, I think people tend to put themselves in kind of a category. And like you said, they also could be in multiple categories, but that's what they're looking for when they're planning a weekend trip or even just a day trip. And they're looking for those specific categories and where would have those things that they're interested in. So I think if you market yourself, as a county, as a community, as an organization, and try and say, hey, here's what we have to offer, and we're breaking it down into interest groups, is one of the best things I think you can do.
Mhm.
One thing that, and I hope to one day get this on the website, one thing that I've worked with past cultural heritage workshops with is basically creating an inventory of everything you have to offer, and that goes down to parks and how to get around and restaurants and shops, and you're documenting everything that your town has to offer, and that way it's you have it right in front of you, and you tend to realize that you have more than you think you do.
Yeah,
So I think that's a great place for people to start too, is creating that inventory.
absolutely. You can't tell people what you have if you don't know what you have. And as you said, a lot of times you have more than you realize that you do. Everybody eats, but some people travel for food or for drink. So, making sure you know about all the different types of restaurants that you have. If you have a winery in your community, the distillers have created a craft trail now. So there are people that travel for that. That's one type of visitor. There are people who travel for other things that also do that when they get there. So again, as you said, if you've taken that inventory and then if you categorize it in broad categories, outdoor, family, culture, which could mean museums or music or however, and then that's the best way for you to get your head around what you have, and then you can start to figure out how to tell other people about it.
And I think too, something I think maybe it was you and me, Lori, during our practice session that we kind of brought this up is, um, taking into consideration that while especially, a smaller community might want to make sure that they are marketing every little thing that they have, that sometimes it's best to figure out what are the things that you do well and that are already attracting people, and to market the heck out of them. And then once you're drawing people into your community, using that as kind of the catch-all, and while they're there, saying, hey, you're here for, like for example, like Missouri wine country. It's very easy to get people to show up to Missouri wine country. You just have to have a nice day, right? So you get people there, and while they're there, it's your job as an organization or a business or a community to make them want to go out and do other things while they're there for the thing that everybody goes there for.
Yeah,
um, so I think that helps you kind of hone in on what your community does well. But then once you get people there, you're able to get them to explore the other things your community has to offer. Get them to stay for lunch, and then turn lunch into an afternoon excursion, and then turn that into dinner, and then hey, you're turning it into an overnight. So I think a lot of communities, the goal is to get that overnight.
right.
um, and I think that that's something that communities could keep in mind.
Yes, I think that a couple things. We do something similar here. We always are looking at what are the drivers, what are the things that are attracting people, and then how can you add on to that? Exactly what you said. And your ultimate goal is an overnight stay, but you have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
So um, don't be so focused on that end result that you kind of scare yourself or not scare yourself, but that you're overlooking the initial steps because it can overwhelm you sometimes too. So,
Absolutely.
one step at a time, baby steps, small bites. Um, what's your big draw? And then how can you build on to that?
I think sometimes too, communities can, like you say, I think overwhelm themselves by trying to attract tourists, but maybe not having the amenities that a weekend stay needs. Not having a hotel, not having enough restaurants or amenities for someone to stay the night. So you can't exactly market a weekend trip if you don't have the amenities to do that. And I think that's also where, this kind of leads into the next topic that I jotted down, which was this kind of regional effort. If you know that we have something that can really attract somebody and get them to our community and spend half a day, but we wouldn't be able to convert them to an overnight because we don't have a hotel. Working with a regional effort, creating that critical mass of working with your neighboring communities that might have that, and getting them to spend more time in different communities, and then they're able to create that well-rounded experience. And I think that kind of goes into, you know I think a lot of times small communities feel like they're competing with one another.
Right.
Whereas what you really have to look at is, well, what do I have that this community doesn't have? And what do they have that I don't have? And how do
Right.
we work together to create a regional effort to draw more people in? Because if one community wins and you're working with another community, then you both win.
Right.
And I think that's something so important that Missouri communities can use to their advantage, is helping to promote one another rather than compete with one another.
Right. So there are a couple of really good examples of that. Right now we have the Highway 36 Alliance, which has been around maybe 10, 12 years now. And they started because they realized that we had this stretch of road that had these really notable figures along it. And how can we all come together? So it's not Marceline just promoting Disney by themselves. They're still doing that, but then they're promoting the entire route as a collective. And so that elevates the product for everyone. And that allows us, when we go to trade shows, or we're talking with press, to talk about, oh, by the way, there's this stretch of road. And so now you've taken, instead of a 1-day trip somewhere, you've turned it into a 2-day road trip or a 3-day road trip. And as you said, everybody wins. So that's a really good example of exactly what you were talking about.
And actually, Marci Bennett, who's with St. Joe Convention and Visitors Bureau and is on I think it's the board for Highway 36. She's our next presentation at 1 p.m. And I specifically chose Highway 36 because I wanted an example, as we're talking kind of a statewide lens right now. I wanted to kind of zoom in and give an example of a regional approach. And so that's what Marci will be talking about, is how this area of Missouri and northern Missouri has really successfully done that in creating this alliance that does exactly what we were just talking about. It works with one another rather than competes with one another under this umbrella of, well, what do we have in common? Well, we're all along Highway 36.
Right.
It's a corridor, creating, doing those corridor type
right.
Excursions or areas has been very successful, I think. We've got a couple questions that are coming in. Someone asked about the Missouri Bicentennial and what Division of Tourism is doing to celebrate or to market the Bicentennial.
So we are supporting the Missouri Bicentennial Commission. Our director is actually on one of the appointed positions or for the Bicentennial Commission. And so we're working with them. We are doing some call outs on social media. We are actually working with them on a badge program where if people visit so many sites, you'll get a badge on your social media. So we're doing a lot of things through them as opposed to specifically on our own.
We have a comment from Suzanne Evans on our Facebook page. And she says, once global travel opens again, the other thing to consider is marketing to foreign visitors in their native language and country. Foreigners have a lot more vacation time and have a tendency to stay longer.
Right. Okay, so we do have, we call it our travel trade program, where we market to domestic group travel and international travelers. We don't directly market to the end user. We talk to tour operators and receptive tour operators to help make sure that Missouri product is in their inventory. One of the biggest draws for international travelers is Route 66. And we know that there are quite a few international companies that sell what they call fly drive packages. So, for example, I actually was just looking at one of their websites yesterday. It's a company in the UK called Bon Voyage Travel. and Bon Voyage sells 14 or 21-day Route 66 package. It's called a fly drive. They go and everything is provided. They pay one price, they get their airfare, they get their rental car, they get their accommodations along the way, and oftentimes meals are included. And so this particular package had 2 nights in St. Louis and 1 night in Springfield. We know that Australians are another big audience for Route 66, for example. But Missouri joined a regional marketing organization called Travel South USA in 2014. And through Travel South, which markets the South as a region, we do the bulk of the rest of our international outreach through some of their programming. So we have done some things targeted in Germany, some things targeting in France, as well as the things that we've done in the UK and Australia, for example, through partnerships, so that we're not out there by ourselves, because it's a big, big market. And to do it alone would take a lot of dollars. So we do it in conjunction with others and sell the whole region. Same principle again.
Related to international travel, someone asked where internationally we ship that travel guide, that yearly travel guide.
Upon request, we have a list of countries that we will ship to. Off the top of my head, I know that we will send some to the UK. We do send some to other European countries, and we will just send some to Australia. I'm not sure about Japan at this time, or China. I think not, but.
And then related also to that, where can an individual pick up a guide?
So if you are near one of our official welcome centers, they are there. You can also just go onto visitmo.com and request one. We will mail it to you. And then we do share them with the destination marketing organization, CVBs, and so many of them have them as well.
Does Missouri Division of Tourism partner with organizations planning specific state or national events, like association meetings, for example?
We don't target business, and we leave that up to the DMOs again. They're selling meetings and conventions. We are talking to leisure, but we do support our DMOs in a lot of ways through our co-op program. So we're one step removed from that.
Gotcha. Okay, let me scroll up here. I think somebody. So I'm going to tweak this question a little bit. The original question is Missouri promoting its history? And I'm going to kind of tweak it to how Missouri promotes its history. She mentions that one facet that's not honed in on is how Missouri shaped the national and international history, like the Louisiana Purchase, Civil War, World War I, World War II, global companies headquartered in Missouri. So what are some ways that the Division of Tourism specifically targets marketing towards history? I think at one point you mentioned that one of your groups is people who do that kind of history, heritage, culture travel. So can you talk a little bit about how Missouri promotes its history?
So we do have one of our MO is Culture MO, and under that there is a History MO. And we promote the history of Missouri like anything else that we promote. It's just incorporated into our overall marketing. So our current campaign, for example, in the 30-second commercial, you'll see Mo walks through an art museum. And then there are, which is not history per se, but for example, at the St. Louis Art Museum, you have a lot of Bingham paintings which depict historic figures in Missouri history. So I wouldn't say that we are specifically promoting history other than it is included in everything that we do. For example, we might talk about Mark Twain and visiting Hannibal in many different ways, or mentioning George Washington Carver, or Jesse James, or any other historic figure that has a museum or something where people can go and experience it. We are on the Civil Rights Trail with the courthouse in St. Louis and the presidential library in Independence. We will talk about the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. We talk about the History Museum in St. Louis. So it's just promoted whenever it comes up and where it fits.
So this is a question that I'll take, and I'll get into it just a little bit because this is a big question, and it's more pertaining to one of our initiatives, which is the Missouri German Heritage Corridor, and how we are going to be promoting that further. So the German Heritage Corridor, we actually have quite a big plan that we hope to put into effect in the next year or so that has some big components to better market it and start influencing more heritage tourism within the corridor. So I won't get into too much detail, but it's a plan that essentially gets people exploring more than, you know, your typical German sites. So places like Herman, Washington, kind of that Missouri wine country, and tries to get people out to some of the lesser known German cultural heritage areas of Missouri. So more on that later, if you want to learn more about what we're doing with German Heritage Corridor, because I mean, over the last year, of course, you know, tourism was not a huge promotion for us. So we've mostly been focusing on programs. We did a podcast on Explore Missouri's German Heritage. So, you know, check out our website, check out our Facebook page, and stay tuned to us, and we'll keep you guys as updated as possible. So if heritage tourism is something you're very much interested in, what we've got coming down the pipeline for the German Heritage Corridor will definitely be of interest to you. So
can I jump in on that too, Caitlin? Because once you have that up and running, certainly we would want to know about it, and then we would work it into, it sounds like it would particularly work well for us on our social media. But in this past spring, we have done a lot of content partnerships with BuzzFeed, Travel Zoo, Rolling Stone, we did one. And so those are the types of things when they're looking for content to include in those types of promotions, those are things that we could add to what we are already doing.
Great. Yeah. And once we, because it's a very preliminary, like we've literally just like made the plan. So once we know a little bit more about what's going to be solidified, Lori, I'd love to have a conversation with you about it.
Sure. We'd love that.
Next question is where we run, and you just kind of mentioned this a little bit, that you partner with places like BuzzFeed, Rolling Stone, et cetera. Where do you run your ads and PR spot? Has your campaign focused on TV or social media?
Both. So starting March 15th of this year, we ran our campaign. Our television runs in the 8 states that surround Missouri. And because we were coming out of the pandemic and we knew that people were more interested in staying closer to home and being more in control, so more road trips, more control, being able to quickly get back home if you felt the need. We also did more in Missouri than we've ever done before. So people are really seeing the commercial this year in state compared to previous years. So those 8 states are our primary targets. And then for television, we also do a lot of social media, a lot of paid social media, so, and a lot of digital. So you will see our ads served up to you on CNN or MSNBC or whatever you might be surfing on the web. You could very possibly, I actually sent a text about a news story to Stephen yesterday evening. And he said, I just got our ad served up again. So yeah, we do a lot and we're doing a lot of paid social.
Great. That's it for questions from participants, but I'll give people a couple more minutes in case anything else happens to come up. But one thing I will say is I loved the Show Me 5 that you guys were talking about. So I think that a fun challenge for our participants here is to go back to your organization, your community, wherever you come from, and think of what your 5 would be. And I think this kind of draws back to what Lori and I were discussing about figuring out what it is your community does well, and what your community has to offer, and thinking kind of outside the box too. And come up with what that show me 5 for your community might be. And it might get you thinking a little bit more critically about what you have to offer. You might have more than you think. So if no other questions are rolling in, I don't see any yet, I'll go ahead and start to conclude. If anything comes up, then, great. And I'll pass it on to Lori. But Lori, any other comments as we've gone through some of these questions and kind of expanded a little bit?
I invite everybody to reach out to us if they have any questions or any information that they want. Thank you all for having us this morning. And apologies for a few times that I stumbled, because this is Stephen's presentation and I haven't practiced as much as I should have. But
no, you did great. Let me make sure. Got some comments. Great job, Lori and Caitlin. Thank you. Glad to hear German heritage. It's come up in conversation for 30 years. Wow. Thank you, Lori. Great job on pinch hitting for Stephen. That's from Trish Erzfeld. She'll be presenting later this afternoon.
Trish.
So Christy has a comment. She said, my children loved a print ad they saw for Mo for every MO that we saw recently. They ran around asking everyone which Mo they were. So that's so fun.
Yes. We don't have that in, but we did it with Midwest Living, and it's like all 26 Mo's on the page.
Oh,
and
that's
actually,
awesome.
I think maybe a couple of the Mo's get cut off on the edges, but yeah, it's kind of fun. So that's one other thing that we didn't really talk about, is that we are looking at how are we going to expand this Mo. We do have life-size Mo's in our welcome centers now, or Mo. And so we're going to be looking to do some other fun stuff. You might see Mo at the State Fair. You might see Mo at the Missouri Governor's Conference, which is in October. So
great.
We're gonna have fun with this one.
Yeah, it sounds super fun. It's great to have a character.
Yeah.
Someone says, great idea for German heritage or other heritages in the works. I assume that's directed at me. We kind of run the gamut. We've got a lot of different cultures and cultural heritages that we like to explore with our programming. So best I can say is stay tuned. You never know what we're going to do with Missouri Humanities. So, but we've got a lot of great projects coming up for the new year. So, which is crazy to say new year. It's only June, but then again, it's already June. So, but yeah, stay tuned to our social media and our website. Sign up to receive our newsletter. That's another great way to learn more about what we're doing. But yeah, thanks for the comment. And yeah, the German heritage stuff is a lot of fun. So a couple more things. If anybody wants to be able to view this at a later date or share it with people or you think, hey, this was great, everybody in my organization should watch this. It was recorded. So this is currently, it's showing live on our Facebook page right now, which means after the program ends, it'll be available as a video on our Facebook page. And that Facebook page is Missouri Humanities Council. So from there, you can grab the link for the video and share it via email. You can share it on your personal Facebook page. And then sometime, I would say next week, since it's already Thursday, this will also be available on our YouTube channel and our website. So it'll be available to view at a later date as well, if you want to go back and listen to something or share it with anybody. So, one more question. Is Mo copyrighted? Talking about maybe looking for their own Mo in their town.
No, we did not copyright Mo. But Mo, the actress, is a paid, the character she's paid to play a character. So no, we did not copyright the concept of Mo.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, with that said, everybody, we will go ahead and end our first webinar. I hope you guys all join us for our next webinar at 1 p.m. and that is Highway 36 Heritage Alliance. Lori brought that up as a great example of a regional effort for promoting heritage tourism. So be sure to come back at 1 p.m. For Marci Bennett's presentation. And thank you all for tuning in with us this morning. Remember, when I end the webinar, there will be a survey that pops up. Please take a few minutes to fill it out. I promise it's not too long, and they're very important to us as we continue to develop programming for the organization. So Lori, thanks again for your time and for stepping in at the last minute. You did a great job. I think there's a lot of great information here. So always happy to work with the Division of Tourism. And for everybody else, have a wonderful rest of your day. And we hope to see you at our later webinars today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.